I was watching highly successful leaders, and as I watched them, I started to ask the question, is there a pattern by which they think?
What do you really have to think about? What do you really have to do? How do you have to change the way that you think? And how can we help people do that in a really structured way? And that's been the goal.
Integrative thinking is the capacity and the inclination to, when facing what seem to be two opposing models, a trade-off that you don't really want to make, to instead of saying, I will choose one or the other, to create a resolution of that tension in the form of a model that contains elements of each of the models but is superior to both.
Compromise is an age-old approach to solving a problem where you have to make a choice between two things that have some upsides and some downsides. The problem is you end up with an answer that it contains some of the upsides of each and some of the downsides of each. Integrative thinking is about taking a different approach, one that says, if I think about this problem differently, if I deconstruct it and go deep and look for opportunities to think about it in a new way, can I come to an answer that has the good things about those two options and maybe some new stuff I hadn't even considered, and gets rid of a lot of the negatives. And so it's a little bit different than a pure compromise. It's more and better than a compromise, and that's what I find most interesting about it.
So what I think of it is, it's an always-on capability in the back of your mind. A little red flag goes up in your mind if you're an integrative thinker that says, this is an unpleasant trade-off. My job is not to make unpleasant trade-offs. My job is to overcome the necessity of making unpleasant trade-offs. So lots of the time the flag is not up, right? Because you're not faced with one. But every time the flag goes up, you say, now's the time to turn it on. There are tools that we teach them about how to tear apart existing models. So you have to be like Jack Welch and say, I understand the model behind how we normally do a budgeting meeting, and I understand the model behind don't do budgeting meetings and let people be all creative. How do I understand those models in a way to build something new that combines the best of both? I was really intrigued by that way of thinking and wondering, you know what, Jack Welch is very successful. Is there a pattern to that? And so I interviewed over 50 highly successful leaders, and lo and behold, that came out as a pattern that was quite consistent across these leaders.
The approach that we take is very much about trying to think in a new way. So we build this as being thinking about thinking, but it's also trying to think in a different way. So we ask people to roll up their sleeves and actually try using these tools. Sometimes we give them specific problems that we think are interesting to think about, but we also ask them to bring in the challenges and the difficulties that they have, the trade-offs that they're facing in their jobs, and spend a little bit of time thinking about those as well. The goal is that they'll be able to walk away having made a little bit of progress on some of their own issues as well. Very specific tools that we think help people think through these kinds of big, sticky, wicked problems that don't bend easily to the tools we already have in our toolkit. So we're talking to people who are very smart, very accomplished, have done lots of really great things, are good decision makers by and large, but there are these really unwieldy problems that we all struggle with. And these are the kinds of problems we think can most productively that integrative thinking can most productively be brought to bear on.
We teach them the process of building entirely new models, because there's a process to that requires a different sort of logic and thinking. So that's what we've found you need as toolbox to be able to do those things that I saw in the research, the original research, saw these highly successful people and leaders doing.
We're offering tools that are as simple as, can you change the way that you ask questions to come to a better answer? And even that takes time to get comfortable doing. It may be that on Monday morning they go back and they have a really sticky problem that's been vexing them for a while. They want to apply the tools directly to right away. Other people may go back and say, there's nothing right now that I really want to apply all of the tools to, but I'm going to start looking for opportunities and practice a little bit at a time. What do you really have to think about? What do you really have to do? How do you have to change the way that you think? And how can we help people do that in a really structured way? And that's been the goal.